It doesn't take an experienced player to know that the difficulty of a game greatly affects how it will be seen to the public eye. This is no exception to the Call of Duty Zombies franchise with its different games and maps. However, difficulty in the Zombies community has always been controversial due to the very different takes many players have towards map and game difficulty. There's a very wide separation between those who like maps that are easier for more casual players to pick up and play without feeling forced to watch multiple Mr. Rafflewaffles guides. And there's the other side of the spectrum, with pro players who enjoy the difficulty of more complex strategies for training and earning rewards for doing Easter eggs. Critical Fox here. I wanted to talk about my opinion on this matter and how it can actually be solved so both sides are happy. But as a matter of fact, that has already happened. I believe that Black Ops 2 not only has the best solution to difficulty out of every Zombies game, but has quite nearly perfected it. First off, what makes a good casual map? I think the most textbook example of a casual map is Doris. This is what is usually classified as bare bones. You have the main essentials, perks, space, and pack-a-punch. There's 2 wonder weapons that you can just get by spinning the box. The reason these maps are preferred to the majority of players is because they're much more digestible, easier to get set up in, and more focused about experimenting with everything the map gives you. To put it simply, you make your own fun. That was one of Jimmy Zielinski's main objectives, who was the main zombie director up until the end of Black Ops 2. Now, before directly talking about Black Ops 2, let me run through the contenders and how they stand with their difficulty. Games like Black Ops 3 and 4 are usually frowned upon by players who just want to get on the game with some friends and have a good time, because even just getting the pack-a-punch on most of these maps is nearly impossible without having the knowledge of that specific map. It doesn't help that the most simple map from both of these games are initially locked behind the Season Pass paywall, which means that casual players who bought Black Ops 3 with their PS4 because they remembered how fun they had playing Kino with their friends was stuck with the map Shadows of Evil, which is a really good map. Hell, it's actually my favorite map of all time. But you understand why someone would drop the game after learning that they had to do a mini Oblivion quest, sacrificing people at Cthulhu altars and collecting magical hentai worms to deliver to a bearded man who's secretly evil and put a giant squid in the sky. Just to get the pack-a-punch. Like, bro, I just wanted to shoot zombies with my ray gun. Shadows in general just wasn't a beginner-friendly map, with areas and perks locked behind the new Beast mode, which was similar to Afterlife mode in Mob of the Dead, making casual play nearly impossible, especially with the Margot running around. Fortunately, if you did get the Season Pass, you got the Giant, which was just a Doris remaster. It was fun, but it wasn't original, but at least it was something to play. It wasn't until Horizon Drag came out that there was an actual easy map for casuals, with more open areas and a relatively simple pack-a-punch, with just going around and interacting with 3 runes to unlock it. Plus, getting the stutter bow wasn't that difficult or confusing. Just fill up 3 dragons by killing zombies in front of it and pick up the bow. It was pretty good, and actually encouraged casual players to try to get in the upgrades. Suddenly, that Noah J. Firebow video is a little more enticing now that you got halfway there. But even if players didn't upgrade the bow, it was still pretty good for a while. Enough for the quick and satisfying match, which, at the end of the day, is what many zombies players are there for. Unfortunately, that was the best casual players would get for a while, with Zetsubo and Gorod being much less friendly to regular player. You can make an argument for Revelations, but I believe it's in a bit of a gray area. Sure, Pack-a-Punch isn't that confusing, but there's always so much going on, especially with enemy variety, that it could pose as too much. But at least Zombie Chronicles was good. Lots of casual maps from many of the older games were brought to Black Ops 3, which definitely made it more enticing than ever to buy the bundle and play. But at the end of the day, those were remasters from other games, and they usually felt better to play on their respective games and engines, which were suited for those maps. Plus, many of the weapons, which are a big part of a map's identity, were lost, leaving a strange taste whenever playing them. Despite all of that though, Black Ops 3 managed to be a fan favorite for the vocal fanbase, with the more casual players feeling very neutral for at least having older maps they knew. The mechanics of Black Ops 3 were very similar to the previous 2 games, so there isn't much to complain about there, which leaves the main reason of fault being not much variety of complex and simple maps. Black Ops 4 was much worse, with even more complex maps and practically 0 casual maps. Not even the 5 remake could stay simple. Plus, all the new perk mechanics and created class wasn't liked that much by, well, anyone. They even added difficulty settings to the game, but they didn't help as much as desired due to all Easter eggs on the casual difficulty being disabled, and pack-a-punching not becoming any simpler. If, for example, the pack-a-punch was given something like objective markers, or even just straight up unlocking after a round or map milestone, the difficulty setting would have at least felt more useful and integral to the game. How is Black Ops 2 any different? When the game launched, you had Transit, the bigger, more important failure kinda. It was a more complex package with buildables, different locations, and an abysmal pack-a-punch system. Though it wasn't liked by most, it still fits that role of an on-disk main map. But with a stroke of genius, most likely from the devs realizing that Transit isn't going to be as loved as they anticipated, made 3 extra survival maps for the rest of the areas of Transit. Town, Farm, and Bus Depot were all available as survival maps with differing amounts of content. Bus Depot was as bare bones as it gets, with just a few wall weapons and a mystery box. Farm had the box and the main 4 perks, and Town had the most, with 6 perks available, a box with 2 locations, and a pack-a-punch. This move was genius, because these map selections were essentially a casual map difficulty selector. How many extra features would you like helping you? Do you want to feel weak and could die at any point? Play some Bus Depot. Want some classic Shinonuma style fun? Farm is there. But usually the player base stuck to Town, which isn't that surprising given that it has the most features of the survival maps. Town is essentially what kept Black Ops 2 going at the beginning of its life cycle. But that wasn't all there was at Black Ops 2's launch. If you pre-ordered Black Ops 2 or later on bought the DLC for $5, you also got Nuketown Zombies. To this day, this map is greatly disliked by majority, but I believe it's an important pillar of Black Ops 2's difficulty. See, around 2 years ago, The Smith Plays was in the middle of his Zombies retrospective series, and on Black Ops 2 he made a great point.
So as a standalone, Nuketown is understandably forgettable, and it's only really when you add it to the entire Black Ops 2 lineup where it not only begins to shine, but also brings up the overall quality of Black Ops 2 Zombies. This is because Nuketown adds range.
There is something for everyone in every mood. Easier maps, harder maps, simple and complex maps. Just because something was easy doesn't mean it was simple. Just because something was difficult doesn't mean it's complex, which is where Nuketown fits in. There is no Easter eggs you have to do for anything, but the layout of the map is so crammed and tight that it doesn't need it to be tough. The only form of complexity is knowing where the perks are going to drop, which sort of puts it in the middle ground of complexity. Every time someone asks me how to get better at training in smaller spots, I always recommend Nuketown because it's simple and helps you learn to survive less than ideal situations. You rely less on Jug because you can either get on around 5 or 15. You get better at recognizing what you can do in such small areas, how close you can get to zombies, how to manipulate their pathing to your needs because you need to in order to get to higher rounds. With Nuketown on the difficult with middle complexity side of the chart, you can start slotting in the other maps and other parts. For the complete opposite, easy but complex, you have Buried, with lots of different strategies that work pretty well. Great wonder weapons and ideas, but you don't need to do everything to have fun. It's easy to get to high rounds while still having things to do around the map. For hard and complex, there's Origins, with an insane amount of things to do, both a difficult map layout with the mud and the pins you're sold out to deal with, but you also have the staffs, which feel almost necessary to survive for a long time. For something complex but in the middle of the difficulty scale, there's Mob of the Dead, which has a similar type of upgrades as Origins, but barely any of them feel required as you can just train in the cafeteria with the sweeper. Something easy but with mid-range complexity, you have Transit, and the 3 survival derivatives being put in their respective places on the simple side. Funny enough, Dire-Res would go in the middle, but it makes sense. It's not that difficult, but also not a cakewalk, with doing stuff isn't that complicated, but the layout is confusing. The reason I went off about the whole chart thing is because I believe that is the best way to separate difficulty. The problem with a game like Cold War is that every map feels easy due to how Cold War systems work as a whole. You have no perk limit, which is fine, but add that on top of the infinite self-revives and safety score streaks, the powerful field upgrades, and the absolutely broken armor system, which I could make a whole video about. And things are so incredibly easy that the only way the devs could counter it later down the DLC cycle was to shove every single boss in the game down your throat to show that the game is difficult. Everything in Cold War is system-based, so every item and weapon and perk is in every map, stopping a huge ton of map variety into gameplay. That's why you see no one play Firebase C. It's not a terrible map, it's pretty cool actually, but nearly every feature in Firebase C was pushed into the rest of the maps or Outbreak in some way, making revisiting it useless. When you artificially inflate maps with every feature in the game, it gets boring because you can have everything in the game at once. So what's the point in playing the other maps? Not only does this not help difficulty, but makes your game less replayable. There's a reason to play almost every map on Black Ops 2. With the exception of maybe 2 survival maps, every single map has unique features. Perks like Tombstone, Who's Who, and Vulture's Aid are all in their respective Victus map, with Electric Cherry being in Mob of the Dead and Origins. The only new wonder weapon that gets put in more than one map is the Reagan Mark II. And even then, the map it comes from, Buried, has another wonder weapon specific to that map. The same can be said about maps that had any special enemies, but I think you get the point. In the end, Black Ops 2 did not cut corners. Sure, not everything worked out as it was intended, but they still managed to bring the widest variety with maps I played more than any other game. I'm sure it's obvious, but I have a bias to Black Ops 2. It's my favorite COD game to date, not just zombies, but in general, and I hope this video can bring some unappreciated maps to light. If you liked the video, please let me know by liking and hitting the subscribe button. This is my first attempt at a video like this. It takes a lot of work, and I would greatly appreciate it if you stuck around. Also, leave a comment if you enjoy the style of content. I'd love to make more if people are wanting of it. Anyways, you have a good rest of your day. See ya.